Anybody home? Anybody home? Anybody? Is anybody here? Anybody? Hi, Davida. Surprise, surprise. Hi, Kathy. Surprise, surprise. Farm wife. Surprise, surprise. How you ladies doing tonight? Hope you're doing well. Are you ready for a story? Scary one. How's the reception? Can you hear me? I mean, is it rubber banding or anything? Kathy, Kathy. Yes, Davita, everybody's worried. She said she's feeling a little bit better. Good, farm wife, good. So the connection is okay? We usually have terrible reception here. But they've got a bigger modem thing from Verizon to use here. So far it seems like it's doing okay. She said she's kicking COVID's butt, farm wife. I sound real clear? Wow. Wonder if it'll be like that during the day. Oh, it's nice though. I tried to go live before Carolyn went live, but that was before I was hooked up, and I couldn't get any signal. Wait a minute. All better now, Kathy? Oh, excuse me, guys. LMN. There'll be a fifth day. Give it just another minute, see if we get anybody coming. Anybody else? And if they don't come, that's fine. Anybody listening in a replay? Welcome, and I hope you enjoy this evening's presentation. I hope it'll be interesting and kind of mysterious and spooky. Okay, I'm gonna have to lay this phone down. I'm on Dave's phone, and I'm going to pick up my phone so that I can read on my Kindle. Okay? Yeah. Hello, man. I hope Alicia shows up. Hope she got the message, the notification. Okay. Let's see. It's laying on a pillow. Oh. Okay, this evening's presentation is called The Spots. It's another short story. That's not squinty eyes. I think you're looking at the plant, one of the jade plants hanging. Maybe. It does look creepy like that, though, doesn't it? Oh, I see the eye up there. You're talking about the light in the ceiling. Yeah, because I have it off. Yeah. Okay, we're going to get this show on the road. Everybody lay back, cover up, grab your pillow, and stretch out and relax. The spots. The first phase of my assignment was to count the leopard's spots. Then to consider the possibility of change. In the words of the leader, first quantify, then evaluate. Finally master. This remorselessly methodical approach was a key to the leader's greatness and just one aspect of his genius. There was only one leopard left of an original 4 in the People's Menagerie, an extensive zoological facility that was located in the palace compound to ensure the safety of the capital's inhabitants. 2 of the creatures had perished in a visionary genetic experiment. One had been executed. Hi, Mary. The leader had suspected November plotters of intending to make use of the beast in some way, perhaps as a symbol or a weapon, or even as a potential ally through whom they might enlist the support of the animal kingdom in their odious conspiracy. There was no material evidence against the leopard, or for that matter, against the finance minister and the colonels. None was necessary. The leader's acclaimed intuition in these matters was unerring and almost uncanny. Indeed, some of the populace attributed powers of telepathy to him. This was absurd, of course, and such superstitious beliefs were held only by the less educated members of society, bearing in mind that this is a relative judgment in my homeland, which has the finest schools in the world. All the suspected plotters were executed after confessing to their crimes in an impartial inquiry conducted according to the highest standards of international jurisprudence in the basement of the Great Hall of Conciliation. The leopard and met its fate with what was reported as perfect equanimity, having been humanely stunned. Hi, Mike. So there was only one animal available for me to study, with no prospect of acquiring other specimens. The 4 leopards had been gifts from nations with which we had since broken off relations after conclusive proof that their governments were part of a reactionary global alliance intent on deposing the leader, motivated by bitter jealousy of his towering achievements. Anybody that wants to listen, I only started like a minute ago, so you could rewind back so you know what's going on. These nations, of which sadly there was a growing number, no longer sent us gifts, and we in turn no longer allowed them access to our precious minerals. However, I set about my work with the diligence of humility that has made me, I flatter myself to think, a valuable servant to the man who bestrides our national culture like a colossus. At first, I observed the leopard in situ, peering through the bars behind which it paced and prowled, glancing at me sometimes in a way that made me suspect it bore me no goodwill. But I found it impossible to count the leopard's spots, let alone consider whether it could change them. Its supple, sinuous movements defied my scrutiny, and when it lay down, I was unable to see all of its body, and the spots that were visible were partially concealed or distorted by the folds of its fur. Alicia, I was hoping you would get the notice. My boo. Let's see. Now I have to keep reading. Let's see, where'd it go? The spots that were visible were partially concealed or distorted by the folds of its fur, which seemed to undulate and ripple even in its sleep. But why, I hear you ask, did you not simply have the beast sedated and inspected at your leisure? A good question, but such a course of action had been specifically prohibited to me by the leader himself in person. Maximilian, he said, using the name he had seen fit to bestow upon me, although it bore little resemblance to the one I still thought of as my own. The leopard must not be disturbed in any way. This is vital. My recent researches have confirmed a feeling, call it an instinct, that I have an extraordinary affinity with this noble creature. Our connection, I believe, transcends even the barriers of species, and I am poised on the brink of a discovery that will revolutionize our entire conception of consciousness and of life itself. I am entrusting you with a very particular and delicate task. This is me telling Alicia all this. Alicia, you're the guy telling the story. I would love to tell you more, my old friend, but I'm afraid I shall have to keep you in the dark for a little longer, much to my regret. Sir, I understand, I replied, and I would never expect you to discuss matters with me that are almost certainly beyond my comprehension. No, no, Max, do not belittle yourself. Your intelligence, yes, you. Hi, Vicky. Your intelligence is exceptionally astute, as I know very well, and I will never forget the impression it made on me in our school days. It is simply a matter of timing. You shall know everything when the time is right. Until then, please indulge your old friend and protector. Will you do that? Say you will. He treated me to his most boyish and expansive smile, which no one could resist. His charm was legendary. Even after all those years, it still affected me powerfully, and I believed I may even have blushed a little. I bowed my head. There is no question that I will do exactly as you ask. You know that, sir. Good, he boomed and chuckled as he took my hand. I knew I could rely on you. He moved closer and dropped his voice. I wish I could say the same about more of my old comrades. Do you catch my meaning? His grip tightened on my hand. I do, sir. Excellent. So please conduct your observations without disturbing my feline friend in any way at all. Understood? Understood. Good. I look forward to receiving your report at your earliest convenience. By the end of the week, let's say. You may go. The researches to which the leader referred were typical of his relentless thirst for knowledge. He sacrificed much of his precious time and energy to the pursuit of science, and he used his immense learning to improve the lives of the ordinary people with his remarkable discoveries, inventions, and breakthroughs. Some of these were considered, hello, Amy. It's wonderful to see you. Haven't seen you in a long time either. I saw you in Carolyn's, I think, last night or something. Maybe. I know you were there. Nice to see you. Some of these were considered by foreigners to be controversial or even harmful. Naturally, most of the populace were ignorant of the slanders propagated by the media lackeys of our enemies. I don't know where this story's going, but I guess we'll find out. Some society and the leopards that this guy could communicate with. Information from outside was controlled scrupulously to prevent it contaminating the pure, indomitable spirit of our nation, particularly its virile but impressionable youth. Nonetheless, a few of us were able to access external media sources, and we were profoundly shocked by the calumnies, CALUMNIES, heaped upon the selfless benefactor of our nation. He strove only to increase his wisdom, and this effort had recently led to an interest in metaphysics after reading the Metamorphoses of Ovid. It goes without saying that he didn't read the material himself. He simply listened to a summary delivered by one of the scholars he engaged for this purpose. His natural intellect was so capacious, that all he required to understand even the most abstruse academic work was a brief preface. Indeed, he could never have accumulated the vast number of honors, awards, and citations that were bestowed on him if he'd done all of his own reading, or writing for that matter. He provided the original ideas for the various theses, papers, and studies that were published under his name, and the details were completed by others. I believe the leader's interest in the leopard was a result of his growing immersion in metaphysical ideas of transformation, and was thus the stimulus for the work in which I was now engaged. However, this work, as I have mentioned, was proving difficult under the strictures he had imposed on me. I came up with the idea of filming the leopard with multiple cameras so that I could then study the footage in slow motion. But I encountered a problem with this scheme. Any cameras that could be used for surveillance purposes were under control of the Ministry of Culture. When I inquired about borrowing some of them, I was rebuffed. After some persistence, I gained an interview with the liaison officer, who put his finger to his lips, gestured for me to follow him into his private bathroom, and ran the taps. In a strained whisper, he told me there were very few cameras to spare, owing to the temporary security crisis of the last 2 decades. Most of the cameras were broken and parts would be unobtainable until the economic miracle began to have an effect. This would doubtless take place soon, once the irregularities that were inevitable in a scheme as revolutionary as the leader's magnificent 5-year plan had been smoothed out, certainly by the end of its second triumphant decade. I returned to the leopard's enclosure, armed only with my notebook and pencils. Hey, Leslie Romani, you be resting too, okay? Davita has COVID right now, Leslie. Leslie has long COVID. Okay, I returned to the leopard's enclosure, armed only with my notebook and pencils, as before, and began my task anew, counting and more counting, and trying to fight a growing sense of panic. The end of the week found me facing the leader in his private box at the People's Skating Rink, which was closed to the public in winter as a precaution against syphilis, which the leader had proved to be spread by shivering. Okay. As far as I could tell, we were the only people there. I could see no bodyguards, advisors, or assistants. What news? The leader asked, clapping his heavily gloved hands and smiling at me jovially. I have failed, sir, I said, bowing my head. My breath made clouds in the air. The heating in the private box wasn't working. I have been unable to count the leopard's spots. The leader said nothing. Eventually, I raised my eyes. I saw he was deep in thought. I knew he would not rebuke me directly. His soul was too large for anything mean or petty in that way. The furrows on his brow, while expressing sorrow, disappointment, and a certain impatience, also conveyed his great compassion for the failings of others. He gazed earnestly at me. His eyes were dark and fathomless. He put his arm around my shoulder. "Walk with me," he said. It was unclear what our destination might be, as space was limited in the box, but it transpired that the leader wished only to walk around in circles. "Dear Max," he said in a low voice, "what are we to do? How can I help you fulfill this task you have so kindly agreed to undertake?" His question was rhetorical. I knew better than to attempt a reply. "I have an idea," he said finally, coming to an abrupt halt and dropping his arm from my shoulder. He gazed into the distance. "Perhaps you should get into the cage," he murmured. "Aye. I would say, perhaps not, sir, but that's just me." "Into the cage, sir?" "Yes." "With the leopard?" "It's the only way," he said, turning to me with a smile. "The animal is playing games with you." He chuckled. "I believe it knows what you're up to, and it's deliberately thwarting you out of sheer mischief." "Mischief, sir?" "Of course. It's a cat, after all. You know how playful they can be." "Yes, the cage, Alicia." I nodded slowly. "So you recommend that I get into the leopard's cage in order to count its spots?" "Recommend? I insist, dear Max." I inclined my head slowly. "And now," he said, "I must be off. I can hear my chopper." Alicia, I can't look at your comments while I'm trying to read this. "I must be off. I can hear my chopper." The approaching clatter of helicopter blades obliged him to bellow his final words to me. "I'm sure you won't mind walking back," the leader said, "as I know how keen you are on getting your exercise." Gosh. He cast a thoughtful look at my shattered leg and my cane. Ugh, this guy's got a shattered leg. And my cane, clapped me on the shoulder, and strode away. Wow. I fled the capital immediately. I didn't go home or to my office. As soon as I heard the helicopter lift off outside, I tore at the lining of my jacket and extricated diamonds I had secreted there over the course of many years. Its value was easily sufficient to procure the services of a passing motorist when I reached the road. The man agreed to take me all the way to the coast. After I assured him I knew how to evade any possible checkpoints. I was confident in this, as the system by which the roads were patrolled was one of the many responsibilities I undertook for the leader in my role as his trusted advisor and general factotum. Factotum, I don't know how you pronounce that. Factotum. Naturally, I withheld this information from the driver, although I doubt if he would have paid attention to anything I said to him, After I'd shown him the diamond, his eyes grew wide, and I had to remind him to keep them on the road each time they strayed towards the gem I clutched in my fist. He knew exactly how much a stone that size was worth, like everything else in a country where the value of the official currency was a kind of fiction in the mind of the leader. It took 36 hours to reach the port, which was full of soldiers as I had expected. It took a further 2 days and nearly all of my diamonds to secure lodgings in the most disreputable part of town and to arrange for a passage in a ship. Every step I took required a considerable bribe to buy the silence of those I dealt with. The ship's captain seemed to know his business, although he appeared to be a little more than a ruffian. This reassured me. Signs of unusual intelligence or sophistication in anyone I encountered at this stage of my flight would have worried me. As I waited another day for the ship to load its cargo, I had plenty of time to think. Had the leader intended all along to kill me? If so, why the elaborate and baroque charade with the leopard spots? Or was the experiment genuine and my fate sealed by my failure to fulfill my task? But I couldn't hope to fathom his mind. I gave up trying and simply waited. Finally, the ship was ready. I received instructions to meet the captain an hour before dawn in a secluded spot behind some warehouses, no more than 100 yards from the pier. The captain was waiting for me when I arrived. Cautiously, he led me to the ship. It had no light showing and loomed above us, a dark shape, barely visible against the moonless sky. It was very cold, and a sudden thought struck at me. Will I have a cabin? I whispered. If not, I may need to borrow some extra clothes. Never mind that, the captain growled. Just get up those steps. I felt a violent shove in my back, and when I turned around, I saw that the captain had been joined by another man who crowded in behind me. I turned to the captain. Who is this? I hissed. I was aware of a swift movement at the edge of my vision. A blast of white light erupted in my eyes. There was an agonizing pain in the back of my head, which faded quickly as inky blackness embraced me. We are at sea. I have been allowed to keep my pencils and my notebook, in which I write these words, and I understand why. I understand everything. I am inside a shipping container. It has been modified to create two compartments, separated by steel bars. I'm on one side of the bars. On the other side is the leopard. Ugh. There was plenty of light, almost too much. On the ceiling of the container, a series of arc lamps blaze perpetually. At the top of the steel bars is a mechanism containing an electric motor, gear wheels, and a pulley system. It is clear that this machinery can be operated remotely and that its purpose is to raise the bars that separate me from the leopard. Ah, my body tells me I've been here about 3 days. On 5 occasions, a small hatch in the wall behind me has opened and a plate of food has been shoved through, but the leopard has not been fed. My mind is wonderfully clear and focused. Finally, I can begin to count the leopard's spots. Perhaps my task is made easier by the leopard's hunger, which may be causing it to move more slowly. I have no doubt, however, that the beast has more than enough energy to spring at me the instant the bars are raised and tear me to pieces. It is this knowledge, of course, that is assisting my concentration. And now I see it all. The leader was always in earnest about counting the leopard's spots. I should have known. He can be playful, but he is never frivolous. When I saw that I when he saw that I faltered in my task, he knew what he had to do. He told me my fate, and he knew I would flee. He would have known that I had diamonds in my possession. Everything was arranged. The passing motorist, the soldiers, my lodgings, the captain, all were part of the plan. This is his genius. He knows the human mind, and he is methodical. I will not fail you, my leader. I know you will read these words, or that they will be read to you. Perhaps you would feel sorrow. Perhaps you will feel sorrow at what you have been obliged to do to your old friend. I know you are capable of it. I have seen you weep over the deaths of other old friends, but please don't waste your tears on me. I applaud you. I serve you and your purpose, whatever it may be, to the very last and without question or regret. Can't get it out. Or regret. But these are not the words you are waiting for. All that concerns you is the result of my task. When I have completed it, I will hand over the notebook, or perhaps just push it through the hatch, so that the legibility of my work is protected from any spatters of the blood that will inevitably decorate this container when the time comes. But enough. Now I begin. 1, 2, 3, and that's the end. Ooh. What happened, Alicia? That was creepy. Did anybody like that story? I liked it. You really did, Alicia, with a snow leopard? Oh my goodness, Alicia. Were you on the trail? Were you trying to go to the bathroom? Did you have to take a potty break when there was a snow leopard? You could have written this story then, Alicia. Alicia. But they say you're not supposed to run. Obviously, we know you're okay. He didn't come and chase you or anything, I guess, hopefully. Well, yeah, because you're here. You're welcome, Mike. I hope you guys liked that little story tonight, and that y'all have a wonderful... Oh, okay, Alicia. I do kind of remember. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful... That's it? Mike. Let me see if I can find one more. It'll be shorter. I know I have some in this Kindle. It'll be something a little bit different. Let's see. Let me get to it. This is just for you, Mike, so you better not leave. Let me find something. Let me get back to my stories. Spooky stories. Come on. Now it's being difficult. Come on. Here we go. Go to the library. Let's see. Let's see what we have. Okay. Okay, this one's out of Spooky Campfire Tales. I don't think I read this one because it comes right up, and that must have been where we ended. This is Cross-Eyed Betty. What's wrong, Cross-Eyed? What happened? But we will keep you in our prayers. What happened? Why do you need prayers, hon? I mean, if you don't want to say, that's fine. We'll just say a silent prayer for you. No, we're going to go one more story. Mike wants another one. Alicia. Will everybody say prayers for Cross-Eyed Betty? We got you, Betty. Oh, okay, Cross-Eyed Betty. Oh, that sounds terrible. Sciatica. I know they say that is so painful. So sorry. Pray for you to get some relief. Just lay down, Cross-Eyed Betty, okay? Try to relax. Just try to stretch out, relax, okay? And we're going to read a story called Mothman. They were too excited to go straight home after the prom, so the group headed to the local soda shop to drink root beer floats and flirt with their dates. Natalie was thrilled to be out late on this special night, in spite of the dreary rain that threatened to frizz her hair. Her prom date, Alex, was captain of the football team and considered the best catch in school. Natalie had won a lot of popularity points when he'd asked her to be his date at the prom. When the root beer floats arrived, Tim, who was dating Natalie's friend Annie, leaned forward and waggled his eyebrows at the two girls. I hear the Mothman has been seen just outside town, he said in a frightening voice, waiting to pounce on pretty girls and eat their hearts out. Ha ha, very funny, Annie said with a frown. Natalie frowned in confusion. Who is the Mothman? She asked. Natalie had moved to town at the beginning of the school year and still didn't know all of the local legends. Tim and Alex were happy to fill her in on the Mothman. As they sipped their sodas, the boys told Natalie the following legend. There was once a scientist who worked on top secret government projects at a local chemical plant during World War II. The scientist was developing a chemical weapon from the poison of South American moths that would destroy the enemy and bring a rapid end to the war. He worked long hours late into the night and grew so tired that he started making mistakes. One night, the beaker where he brewed his deadly concoctions exploded right in his face. The scientist was blown through the wall of his office and lay on the floor of the hallway, writhing in desperate pain as chemicals burned through his body. As the top secret potion mixed with the scientist's body chemicals, the man started mutating. Great moth-like wings burst from his shoulder blades. His arms and legs elongated. Claws formed on his fingers and toes, and his eyes glowed red with fire. Let's see. His incisors became fangs that bit right through his lips, tearing them to shreds. The mutated scientist The mutated scientist licked hungrily at the blood with his striped tongue. and the taste awakened another fire in his gut, a deep, burning desire for human flesh. The accident in the lab had triggered the alarm bell. Night watchmen ran into the hallway and came face to face with the new monster. They were the first to die. One man escaped into a guard booth and called in another alarm while the monster tore at the door with superhuman strength. The guard's frantic babbling was cut off by a sudden scream as the monster tore out his heart with its sharp claws. His dying words were, "Mothman, save us from the Mothman." The phone dropped from his lifeless hand as the newly christened Mothman sank down on his haunches and devoured the man's dripping heart, chuckling in delight as blood spattered its twisted face. By the time the police arrived, the monster had vanished into the mountainous forest behind the chemical factory. The Mothman is still out there, waiting for unsuspecting people to walk in the woods so he can eat their hearts, Tim concluded gleefully. Natalie shuddered. She couldn't help it. Alex laughed and threw his arm over her shoulders. "Why don't I drive Natalie home so she feels safe?" he said. "You and Annie can wait for the bill, right, Tim?" Alex tossed his buddy some cash and hustled Natalie out of the soda shop with a broad wink. Natalie heard Annie giggling. They both knew why Tim and Alex had told such a scary story. The boys thought the girls would be ready to do some snuggling after receiving such a scare. And Natalie had to admit the idea of cuddling with Alex was very appealing. He was really cute. Natalie wasn't surprised when Alex pulled off onto a remote country road about halfway home and proposed parking for a while. She blushed demurely and agreed. Just as Alex slipped his arm around her, the car shook from front to back, as if struck by a mighty wind. Natalie gave a small shriek and clutched his shirt in alarm. "What was that?" she cried. "Was it the Mothman?" Alex laughed. Relax, darling. It's just a thunderstorm." He pulled her close. "I'm scared," Natalie said. She thought she had seen a dark shadow pass over the car just after the wind shook it. In her mind, she pictured a twisted face with fangs, eating the security guard's bleeding heart. "Relax, babe," Alex said and kissed her. Alex was a good kisser. Natalie forgot her fear and kissed him back. Suddenly, the whole vehicle rocked on its wheels as something large landed on the roof with a huge thump. Natalie pulled away from Alex with a shriek. "What was that?" "The wind just knocked a branch onto the roof," Alex said, trying to kiss her again. "I want to go home," Natalie said, her voice trembling with fear. A high-pitched whine came from the roof. It sounded like claws were scraping the metal. Natalie screamed. "The Mothman is here, Alex. I want to go home." "It's just the tree branch scratching the top of the car," Alex said. "Come on, Natalie. We never have time to ourselves. Just ignore it." But Natalie was too scared to stay. "Take me home, Alex," she repeated stubbornly. "Look, if it'll make you happy, I will pull the branch off of the car," Alex said, hopping out into the rain before Natalie could protest. He stuck his head back in the door and said, "Lock the door behind me if it makes you feel better. I'll knock when I've got the branch off the car." Oh boy. Remember these stories from when I was a kid. Remember, Carol and I were talking about these before on the stream, on the live. Natalie locked the door behind Alex and sat listening to the rain, thudding against the car as Alex disappeared into the darkness. She heard a sudden thump overhead, and the car rocked a third time. That must have been Alex pulling the branch off the roof. The car rocked once more, and a puff of wind rattled the windows. Then everything grew still, save the gentle patter of the rain. 1 minute passed, and then two. Natalie shivered and rubbed the goosebumps on her arms as she waited for Alex to knock on the door. She swallowed nervously when he did not appear. He's probably going to jump at my window and make me scream, she told herself. Alex could be so juvenile sometimes. But Alex still did not appear. Natalie was steeling herself to get out of the car to look for her boyfriend when she saw flashing red and blue lights approaching along the road. Relief flooded her, making her lightheaded. Thank God the police had come. She and Alex would probably get in trouble for parking, but Natalie didn't care. She just wanted to find Alex and go home. Can you guys see this illustration? It's actually pretty. Suddenly, the police car slammed on its brakes, and two men leapt out. Then, Alex's car shook as a thunderous wind rushed around it. Something scraped the roof over Natalie's head, and she could hear the police officers firing their guns. Natalie screamed as a huge dark shadow flew off into the night. One of the officers ran to Alex's car and pounded on her door. Still screaming, Natalie unlocked it and threw herself into his arms. The officer hustled her toward the police car as something unearthly screamed above them. Natalie ducked instinctively as the horrible flapping creature dive-bombed them. The police officer pushed Natalie to the ground and shielded her with his body. The monster's claws ripped his back to shreds right through his bulletproof vest. Natalie heard the second officer fire two more shots. Then she heard the monster fly away over the trees. Tears and mud coursed down Natalie's face as the wounded officer pulled her up and helped her into the patrol car. My date, she cried suddenly. Alex was outside with that thing. What happened to Alex? The officers looked grave and shook their heads. Don't look, miss, the first officer said. But Natalie couldn't help herself. She glanced at the parked vehicle illuminated by the flashing lights of the patrol car and saw massive claw marks etched into the hood. A small bundle huddled on top of the rain-soaked roof. For a moment, Natalie's eyes refused to understand what they were seeing. Then the officer touched the bundle, and Alex's head fell toward the headlights, blue eyes staring blankly at nothing, face twisted in a rictus of fear. His chest was gaping open, and his half-chewed heart lay on the muddy ground at the officer's feet. Ay.
Yummy.
Oh, you were here? You were listening?
Yeah.
Hey, you've heard that before, right, Lex?
Yeah, Mothman.
Yeah. I just never knew that was the Mothman story. That was something we used to hear when we were kids. If it was the Mothman, I didn't know that part.
I didn't know about it being created in a lab and eating hearts.
Hi, Nicole. Yes. I was hoping nobody heard her say me. Hi, Tracy B. That kid, I'll tell you. Okay, I'm going to read one more since we're here. The Clown Mannequin. Jan arrived promptly at 6:45 p.m. for her babysitting job. The Smiths lived in a rambling old farmhouse set in the middle of a fenced-in yard. Rhododendrons lined one side of the house, and rows of Sharon bushes dominated the other. In front was an overgrown English garden. Oh, Alicia Biso wants to know what your Instagram is.
Uh,
Oh, she doesn't. You don't want to say it out loud.
no.
Oh, I don't. She doesn't want to say it out loud. Sorry, Alicia. Just message me or something in Slack, and she can tell you. Okay, let's see. And in back was a large lawn, perfect for football games. Anne loved the Smiths' house. She hoped to own a place like this someday when she was a rich and famous author. But for now, Jan appreciated the chance to hang out in such a lovely house with two rambunctious but enjoyable twin boys. Normally, the boys and their Yorkshire Terrier, Lady, came spilling out of the front door when Jan arrived. Tonight, Jan found herself walking to the front door of the old house unaccompanied. This was highly suspicious. Mrs. Smith opened the front door with a smile and greeting. A moment later, two syrupy sweet voices called to Jan from upstairs. Jan, come up and look at our comic book collection. This was extremely suspicious behavior. Mrs. Smith gave her a meaningful grimace that confirmed Jan's theory. The Smith boys were up to something. Jan carefully climbed the stairs and walked down the hall, expecting the boys to jump out at her at any second. Nothing happened. She knocked on the twins' bedroom door. Come in, the boys called. Jan swung the door open warily and found herself facing a menacing 6-foot-tall clown mannequin. It leered evilly at her through white-lashed red eyes, its large grin painted so wide it nearly touched the two large ears. Ugh. A happy spotted hat bagged over one ear and matched the ludicrous red spotted baggy pants, which were held up by red suspenders over a white shirt. Jan shrieked in horror and stumbled backward out of the room. She tripped on the edge of the hall rug and sat down hard. Inside the bedroom, the twins laughed hysterically, and their little Yorkie barked. The dog ran into the hall to frisk around the humiliated Jan as the twins rolled on the floor at the mannequin's feet. I told you she'd be frightened, cried Eddie. Say hi to our new friend, said Freddie, grabbing the mannequin's shirt and walking it toward Jan. That thing is hideous, Jan said, pulling herself upright on the hall table. Her legs were shaking so badly she could hardly walk. Why do you have such a hideous thing in your room? Clowns are creepy. Ha ha ha, chortled Freddie. Clowns are creepy. He thrust the mannequin's hand toward Jan. How do you do? He asked in a fake deep voice. Ugh, Jan said, avoiding the mannequin's hand. Close up, she could see the elastic band that attached the clown mask to the mannequin's head. I don't know how you can stand to keep such a creepy thing in your room. I'll be downstairs if you twin nightmares need me. Jan stalked out of the room and slammed the door behind her. The mannequin was truly horrible. There was something so eerie about a clown. You could never tell what they were thinking behind the makeup. Ugh. Downstairs, Mrs. Smith was looking for her glasses, and Mr. Smith was adjusting his tie, using the stainless steel refrigerator as a looking glass. You have our cell phone number? Mrs. Smith said, and the number of the police station? And you know to call 911, if there's a fire or some emergency. Jan grinned. Mrs. Smith always ran through this litany before going out. Jan solemnly assured her that she knew what to do in an emergency. The Dantes are home tonight, Mrs. Smith continued, gesturing to the blue ranch house next door. You can always run over there for help if there's a fire. There won't be a fire, Mr. Smith said, smoothing down his rather crooked tie. Don't worry, Martha. Oh, she's got my name, Alicia. I've heard there's an escaped convict on the loose in the next county, Mrs. Smith continued, ignoring her husband. That serial killer who killed all those children in Virginia. So be sure to lock the doors behind us. Martha, you're going to scare Jan so bad she won't babysit for us again, Mr. Smith complained. Come on, we're going to be late for our dinner reservations. So she says that so casually. That serial killer who killed all those children in Virginia, so be sure to lock the doors behind us. Come on, said Mr. Smith. We're going to be late for our dinner reservations. Mrs. Smith called the twins downstairs to kiss them goodbye and asked them to set the table for Jan. As she breezed out the back door, she called, Dinner's in the oven, and remember to lock up behind us. Jan hurried around the house, locking all the doors. Between the creepy clown mannequin upstairs and Mrs. Smith's talk of an escaped serial killer, she wasn't taking any chances. This is funny, though. Once she was done locking up, she pulled a casserole out of the oven, and everyone sat down at the table to eat dinner. Lady begged winsomely beside the twins' chairs until they caved in and gave her a bite from their plates. The Yorkie was trotting purposefully toward Jan when her head went up and she stopped to listen. A moment later, she bounded out of the kitchen and ran upstairs. Jan heard her barking at something in the twins' room. Then she heard a thud, and the barking stopped abruptly. What was that? Is something wrong? She asked the twins. Nah, said Freddie. Lady likes to bark at the squirrels in the oak tree outside our window. She jumps on the bed and throws herself at the glass, Eddie added, spooning more casserole onto his plate. Sometimes she knocks her head so hard she gets dizzy and has to lie down. Silly dog. The little Yorkie was still upstairs when the twins and Jan finished dinner. I'm pretty full. How about we wait a few minutes to eat our ice cream? Jan suggested. The twins clutched their full stomachs and agreed. Let's run upstairs and check on Lady, Jan said. Then we can watch your favorite TV show. It starts at 8. The twins cheered at both these suggestions. They charged upstairs and burst into their room, calling for Lady. Jan, jogging at their heels, reeled back a step or two when she saw the clown mannequin by the window. It was almost as much of a shock on the second viewing as it had been on the first. Jan frowned suddenly. Something was different in here. Hadn't the clown mannequin been standing in the center of the room? The boys must have moved it after playing their practical joke on her. On the far side of the room, the twins were kneeling on the floor, looking under the bunk beds for Lady. And here's another illustration for you guys. Let's see. I don't know if you guys can see it through the chat. Ooh, Silence of the Lambs is so creepy. See the clown. He's laying there in the yard. She's not in here. She must be downstairs in her basket, Eddie said. Come on. He rushed away, and Freddie followed. Jan cast one last shuddering glance at the clown mannequin before following the boys. For a moment, she thought she saw its chest move. And was that a blink? Ridiculous. Oh, I just scared myself. I glanced over here at Dave's phone that I'm on, and I thought I saw something moving. Hi, Moo. Well, at least you're here now. No, I'm not a fan of them either. After American Horror Story, Twisty the Clown, that one scared the you-know-what out of me. And it. Okay, and was that a blink? Ridiculous, she said to herself, goosebumps all over her body. I hate clowns. She hurried down the stairs, glad to get away from the creepy mannequin. Ladies in her basket in the laundry room, Freddie announced as Jan hurried into the front hall. She's sleeping. She must have knocked her head really hard against the window. Jan peeked in at Lady, who was curled up on the splotchy white cushion in her basket. There were wet paw prints leading toward the basket. Jan wondered if the washing machine was leaking. Before she could investigate, Eddie called to her from the living room, and she hurried to answer him. She'd check on Lady once the twins had settled down to watch their show. In the kitchen, Jan scooped vanilla ice cream into 2 bowls. Then she went into the living room and handed the bowls to the twins, who were already absorbed in their cartoon. Freddie looked up suddenly and said, Jan, I forgot to bring my bike in from the yard, and it's supposed to rain tonight. Would you please get it for me? Jan gave the tousle-haired boy a mock frown. After the scare you gave me with that clown, I should make you do it. Freddie clasped his hands in supplication and gave her a cherubic grin. Jan relented. All right, you monster. Watch your show. I'll be right back. So don't eat all the ice cream. Jan jogged out through the back door and glanced around the yard. No bike. Freddie must have left it on the side of the house. She circled the premises clockwise until she saw Freddie's bike laying between the oak tree and the rhododendrons. As she picked up the bike, she glimpsed a funny-shaped clump lying in the bushes under the twins' window. Jan wheeled the bike over to take a look. Something about the huddled shape made Jan's skin feel clammy and her knees shake. It resembled a human body, but that was nonsense. Jan had to force herself to take a closer look. To her horror, Jan saw a naked mannequin lying under the bushes, stripped of its gaudy clothing and clown mask. Chills ran through Jan's body at the sight. Dear God, if the mannequin was down here, then what or who was upstairs in the boys' bedroom? Panicked, Jan dropped Freddie's bike and sprinted frantically for the back door and the TV-watching twins. The vision of the too still form of lady lying in the basket replayed itself in her mind. She'd wondered about the funny splotches on the white cushion. They looked like splotches of blood, and wet paw prints on the floor leading to the basket. Dear God, don't let me be too late. Jan spun around the corner into the living room and stopped in heartfelt relief. The boys were still sitting on the couch, absorbed in their cartoon. They looked up in surprise at her sudden entrance. Putting her finger to her lips, Jan beckoned mysteriously to them, hoping their curiosity would overcome their desire to watch TV. Eddie and Freddie glanced questioningly at her. Their They opened their mouths to speak, but she shook her head and beckoned again. Silently, the boys came over to Jan, who caught each of them by an arm and hustled them out the back door and over to the neighbor's house without explanation. Once the twins were safe with the Dantes, Jan dialed 911 and begged the police to send someone over to check the house. Then she called the Smiths and told them to come home at once. I'm probably being silly, she said to Mrs. Dante, but I'm sure it was the twins' mannequin lying in the bushes, yet I saw the clown mannequin upstairs. An unmarked police car pulled into the driveway, and Jan ran to meet it so she could explain what she'd seen in the twins' room. The police officers sent her back to the Dantes' home to wait while they checked the house. The Smiths arrived, and Jan was trying to explain to the frantic parents the reason she'd called the police when gunshots exploded upstairs. Jan screamed as a man in a clown costume plunged backward through the twins' bedroom window, glass shattering everywhere. The man hit the ground with a loud thud and laid still at the base of the rhododendrons as more police officers drove up to the house. In the flashing red and blue lights cast by the police cars, Jan could see that the dead clown had landed right beside the body of the mannequin that he had replaced in the bedroom. Much later, the police told Jan and the Smith family that the escaped serial killer had climbed the oak tree, crept into the twins' bedroom, and disguised himself as a clown, throwing the incriminating mannequin into the bushes where it wouldn't be seen. He had slit the little Yorkie's throat, when she barked at him, and the poor mite had crept downstairs to bleed to death in her basket, while the killer waited upstairs for the twins' bedtime. Why'd they have to put that part in there? If Jan had not seen the mannequin when she went outside to pick up Freddie's bike, the boys and Jan would have been murdered. The end. Wow. Little Yorkie. No, we're gonna change it. The little Yorkie was fine. She just had a little cut on her leg. And they took her to the vet and she got stitches and she was fine. Okay? We're changing that part. I hope you guys liked the stories. No, they don't. Who's gonna go to sleep now? Oh yeah, they said tonight, well, May 30th, May 31st, we may get to see a whole bunch of meteors in the sky. If it's not too cloudy. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, why? I haven't watched him in forever. Yeah, I like his voice too. It's so soothing. Yes, I love his channel, Leslie. It's great. Martha, really? Well, yeah, we changed it. I changed that. I don't want him, the little Yorkie, dead. And I know you guys don't either. So we're changing it. Okay, y'all. Have a wonderful night and day wherever you are. Thanks for coming, you guys. Get some sleep. If it's nighttime by you, go to sleep. Love you guys.